It's that time of the week when former football and sports stars share their stories, plus the Next Man Up segment featuring news and notes from around the world of Major League Football. It happens all right here, right now, on Thursday Night Tailgate, with your hosts, Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari. Guys, enjoy the guests. Have some fun. Take it away.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us again tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate, your home of the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. TNT is brought to you by the great folks over at Kyvan Foods, Coastal Orthopedics, the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, and the French Lick Resort. I'm your host, Chris-Mascaro, and tonight my co-host, Bob-Lazzari, and I have 5 more great guests that we're looking forward to sharing with you. Like Joe said, we're going to start things off tonight with our weekly Next Man Up segment with Major League Football, and this week their VP of Media Relations, Nick Athan, will join us to update us on the plan that they have for the rest of this year, and then we'll look ahead to 2017. Then our good friend and former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins, fresh off his vacation in the Bahamas, will be back with us to share more of his insights. Following Tony, Cleveland Browns Pro Bowl tight end Gary Barnidge is going to be making his TNT debut, so we look forward to talking with Gary. We'll kick off hour number 2 with TNT alumni and former Packers All-Pro kicker Chris Jacke. And then we're going to wrap up the show with another good friend, and that's former Saints and 49ers and Carolina Panthers defensive back Toy Cook. So we've got another great show in store for you tonight. So sit back, relax, and let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next couple of hours. So let's get things rolling by bringing in my co-host from up in Eastern Connecticut, Mr. Bob-Lazzari. Bob, how are you tonight, my friend?
Okay, Chris. Hi. Thanks for checking in, my friend. What's up down there?
Well, Bob, it's, happy Masters Week for those golf fans we have out there. And I was blessed to head over on Monday for a practice round. Took my son Jonathan with me. We had an absolutely fantastic time. I can't imagine having a better time spending that kind of quality time with your son, and being in Augusta National is my favorite place on the planet. You could pick me up, Bob, and say, Chris, I'll drop you anywhere on the planet. Where do you want to go? And I'm going to tell you Augusta National every single time. It is just that beautiful and that special, and TV just does not do justice. And we all see it on TV and how beautiful it is, but it just doesn't do it justice with the elevation changes and the azaleas and all the blooming trees and the just sort of the ambiance of being in that historical place and getting to share it with your son. It just doesn't get much better than that, Bob.
And you said the weather was terrific that day, Chris, and I could only imagine 70s in the 70s, and when you see Augusta, I mean, I've never been there, but I mean, I see it. I'm just seeing pictures, and it looks like something out of a movie. But I'm glad we ran into some great weather. I guess it was a little windy there toward the end of this week, but I'm glad you got out there, and I know it's a rite of passage for you every year.
Yeah, it really is. It's a sort of a rite to spring to me every year going over there. And you're right, today, obviously, the wind's kicking up. Had a little bit of rain here overnight last night, so it's supposed to be really windy and cool over the next couple of days. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys deal with the weather conditions. Not usually this windy. They're talking about winds somewhere 18 to 20 miles an hour for the next couple of days. So these guys aren't used to seeing that here. You see that more in an Open Championship over in the British Open, Bob. You don't typically see that kind of weather, those kinds of winds for this long here in Atlanta or over in Augusta. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys deal with the weather conditions.
Yeah, we've had up here. We've had 60-mile-per-hour winds this week, Chris. That's why they play the Travelers Championship in June, July in that area. So golf is. We're starting to talk about it up here, but it's still a ways away. So.
Bob, I want to get a couple of quick thoughts, like I like to do with from you as we kick off the show. This week, the NFL announced that they've sold the live streaming rights for their Thursday night games to Twitter, so fans are going to be able to stream the game live while they're also tweeting about it, and you're going to be able to do that all on the same screen, Bob. And the NFL also sold rights to broadcasting 5 Thursday night games to CBS and NBC, so further sort of diversifying how and where we're going to be able to view games. Bob, your thoughts on the league going digital?
Well, Chris, the NFL is in the process, in the business of making money, and they do it as good as anyone. And first of all, Twitter, it's going to be amazing how they incorporate it. The way we look at Twitter is just a posting board and everything, and it's going to be a major difference when we see actually people tuning in there to watch games. But, Chris, there's 800 million users out there, and the NFL likes big numbers, and putting it out there, they get their money back in spades. Chris. So, 800 million people going to be watching Twitter. And as far as the networks, Chris, again, the NFL wants to get their name out there anyway, and there's no way these networks are stepping on each other. They actually promote each other's stuff now because no one is going to. You can't go against the NFL. You can't threaten them or anything like that. And they're going on ratings too. That when they started on, just on the NFL Network, when they went to CBS, the last couple of years, the ratings went through the roof. So now they're just going to extend that. It's the most popular game in the world, Chris, and they're just taking advantage of tons of viewers. It makes a lot of sense, and ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching is all I hear.
Indeed. I'll tell you what, Bob, I got fair warning for the league, and I can tell you as a guy who bought DirecTV streaming package this past season, it was an absolute disaster. I have Comcast's, top internet package. But trying to watch games last season was extremely frustrating. The stream froze, for minutes on end. You had to refresh, the screen constantly throughout games. I highly do not recommend DirecTV streaming service. They're going to have to make that thing tons better before this next season. It was absolutely horrible. And I hope Twitter does a much better job of understanding that. I'm sure there's extreme demand placed on, their infrastructure. I'm sure that's what, DirecTV found, that the demand for, trying to stream and, based on whatever it's on, their servers or whatever it was. I hope Twitter learns a lesson and is able to avoid that and make sure they've got everything in place, because it's going to be a high level demand, pinging, to be able to try to stream. And, it's a great concept, Bob, to your point. It's great that, the idea that you can stream and tweet right from the same screen as you're watching. I think that's very convenient. Lots of people watch games and tweet at the same time. We see lots of, former players doing that sort of thing, which is, which is fantastic. I just hope Twitter is up for it. And, they're certainly, to your other point, Bob, the NFL is not suffering from any lack of viewership, right? In most of the shows, I think if you went back and said, what are the most, watched shows over the last, 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to find that the majority of them are NFL football games, whether it's a Super Bowl, a playoff game, or some of the regular season games. You're going to find the NFL all over the most watched shows from week in to week out, year in to year out. So anyway, bringing in a couple of more, networks certainly isn't going to hurt. I think, at some point you're going to get confused. Am I watching it on CBS tonight? Am I watching it on NBC tonight? Where can I find it? And you're scrolling through the guide. Fortunately, the networks are all pretty much bunched together, so you won't have to search too far to find it. I think that's the only sort of issue. But to your bigger point, Bob, it's just all about, extra revenue. Where can we get more revenue? And they seem to continue to be able to find it, and we're glad to pay it.
Yeah, 800 million users, Chris. That probably takes care of some of the marketing, their targeted marketing for the year. So it's almost like a hobby to the NFL. Twitter will.
Yeah, and it is. And, to Twitter, and for those, if you look around, Twitter isn't doing all that well. They've been suffering pretty much as an entity. So this is sort of a good move. Maybe it's a desperation move to kind of get back, some of the attention and some of the users on their site. Their stock down 66% over the last year, Bob, when you go back to this point last year. So their CEO, Jack Dorsey, I'm sure is under a tremendous, amount of pressure to get them in a better spot. And, there's no better way to get in a better spot than hooking your wagon up to the NFL. So, kudos to him for getting the deal done. We'll see how that impacts their investors and that sort of thing. But anyway, good for Twitter. The other thing, Bob, I wanted to kind of get your thought. And again, as the NFL spreads its wings, they've been, talking about games, being played over in London. We've seen that over the last several years. They're talking about going back to Mexico City. Well, Bob, now they're talking about playing a game over in China. And the Rams are lobbying to be the home team for a game over there in 2018. And I found it interesting that in their relocation agreement, the Rams relocation agreement, there is a clause stipulating that they would participate in one international game in each of the next 3 seasons, which one is, pretty shrewd marketing for them, whether it's, in London or it is over in China, for a team that is, trying to, build its brand back, if you will, now that they're the LA Rams again and not the St. Louis Rams. But boy, you get your merchandise out there in those international markets is a pretty good move. I'm not sure, your new home fans are going to appreciate, potentially having one less home game, though it is LA, Bob, and we know from the Dodgers that, fans are pretty much gone midway through the third quarter or by the 7th inning if you're a Dodger fan. But curious, Bob, to get your thoughts on the league and the Rams potentially playing a game over in China.
Well, we've talked about it on the show before, Chris, how they want to expand globally, but I think you already hit it on the head. It's international marketing. Do I think that I'm going to see 9 out of 10 people in China wearing a Brady jersey like they do right here in New England? No, but they're going to get it out there, Chris. They're going to get merchandise out there, but this is totally a marketing thing. It has nothing to do with these guys enjoying the trip over there. Chris, it's going to take these guys a week to recover from a trip like that.
Right.
And there is, and I was looking at the time difference, Chris. It's a 12-hour time difference. So when do you show that game here in the United States? Think about it. When would be a good time?
Right.
Try to pick a time and see, when it would happen over there. And there's the 12-hour time difference. Right now it's 8 o'clock in the morning over there. So if you showed it here at 8 at night, you'd have to play the game at 8 in the morning there. It's probably the way they're going to have to do it. But again, it all comes down to marketing. They'll play a game in Pakistan if they have to, Chris. You know that.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point about the 12-hour difference. You got to wonder, and Bob, you and I have both been fortunate enough to make a trip out to Hawaii, and I always find it interesting, that it's a 5-hour difference from the East Coast out to Hawaii. So that 1 o'clock game on Sunday is starting at 8 o'clock out in Hawaii. So, you figure if you were going to have a 1 o'clock game, well, you're certainly not going to have, them playing at 1 o'clock in the morning China time. You want to talk about really screwing some guys up, right? It's bad enough, the 12-hour time difference. Now you're going to have them start playing at 1 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do decide, with that. Would you play it? A 9 o'clock game, is it outrageous to think that a 9 o'clock, evening game over in China is a 9 o'clock in the morning game here? Is that outrageous to think that you would do that? I don't know. It's certainly not out of the realm of possibility, but that's a very interesting point. It's going to be interesting to see what the league decides to do and how they decide to go down that route. But again, you're right. This all comes back to international marketing, more dollars, more awareness for the NFL, growing the game theoretically over in China and parts, in the Far East. So, again, we continue to see the NFL trying to reach new corners, and China would certainly be a new corner.
Exactly, Chris. So with the World League now, think about where they've been: London, Germany. They just want to put their stamp all over and kind of cover the globe and just get their name and merchandise out there. And again, it's all about ka-ching, ka-ching, and nobody does it like the NFL.
That's right. Be sure to follow Bob's column in New York Sports Day, as well as his show, Monday Night Sports Talk, that he does along with Tony D'Angelo, both the column and their show. Fantastic, folks. All right, everyone, like we do here every week on Thursday Night Tailgate, we want to send out a big hello and an even bigger thank you to our military personnel listening in around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network. We want to thank all of you, A, for listening, and B, for doing what you do to protect all of us. We appreciate you so very much. For everyone else listening in, thank you as well, and we hope you'll join us in saying thank you to our brave men and women serving to protect our freedoms around the world. If you see a member of the military in the airport, out on the street, in a restaurant, or just sort of out and about, please Stop for a moment and tell them thank you. They are our real heroes. We also want to thank our veterans for your service and the sacrifices that you and your families made for us. Big thank you as well to Sean Cruz and the wonderful folks over at the Armed Forces Radio Network. It is such an honor for us to have Thursday Night Tailgate as a part of your network. You can find us by going to armedforcesradionetwork.org. And veterans, please continue to check out globalvoiceforveterans.org. Great news, great articles that are targeted for you. You're going to find those articles both interesting and beneficial. Again, globalvoiceforveterans.org. Check it out. TNT is also sponsored by the great folks over at Kyvan Foods, owned and operated by our friend and former Falcons and Bengals tight end Reggie Kelly. Folks, if you want to be king of the grill this summer, it is a must that you use Kyvan Sweet Barbecue Sauce, ranked number 15 in the world by Barbecue Superstars. This barbecue sauce is a must for the big game, your tailgating needs now. As we switch over to baseball tailgating, you're going to find it available at select Walmarts and Kroger's throughout the eastern half of the country. For locations, online orders, and recipes, check out their website at Kyvan82.com. And Kyvan is spelled Kyvan. And if your local Walmart doesn't carry the Kyvan Sweet Barbecue Sauce, well, request it. I'm sure they're going to be happy to add it to their shelves for you. TNT is also sponsored by Dr. Peter Candelora and the great folks over at Coastal Orthopedics. Folks, if you're quietly or not so quietly suffering from joint pain, well, stop and do what the Gridiron Greats do to get relief. And that's contact Coastal Orthopedics. They can help get you back to enjoying life. For more information, check them out online at bone-dr.com. And folks, like we say, baseball season is underway now, and if you love the game, you and your family are absolutely going to love the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. It is a very cool experience for everyone in the family because you get to walk their live production line and see the bats being manufactured right there in front of you. They got a lot of cool exhibits out there right now. Don't miss the Bat Vault, where you can actually hold game-used bats from so many of the game's greatest legends. I got to hold Ted Williams' bat, my hero Willie Stargell from the Pirates when I was growing up. Got to hold his bat. They got tons of them in there. It's absolutely breathtaking when you walk into the Bat Vault. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go to sluggermuseum.com. We also want to thank and welcome our newest sponsor, and that is friends from over on the golf side on Next on the Tee, the French Lick Resort. Folks, you are not going to find a better place to stay and play golf or simply relax and enjoy life than the French Lick Resort. If you've ever wondered what it's like to play in a major golf tournament, right? We got the Masters going on right now, right? What's it like to play in a major? Well, you can do it year-round there on their Pete Dye course because it's the home of last season's Senior PGA Championship and the LPGA Legends Championship. They also have the Donald Ross designed course there, which was the site of Walter Hagen's PGA Championship victory back in 1924. Got a great spa, and oh, by the way, a casino right there on the property as well, folks. To find out more information and to book your stay, go to FrenchLick.com. And also, please, don't forget our friends over at the Gridiron Greats organization. Please help support a wonderful cause that's taking care of the guys who literally left so much of themselves out on the field. Remember, folks, these are the guys who had to get off-season jobs to help support themselves and their families back in the day. It's organizations like this one, started by Mike Ditka, the Gridiron Greats, that are trying to help the guys we all grew up watching and reading about. Please go online to gridirongreats.org to see what you can do to help get involved. All right, now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is in our weekly Next Man Up segment with Major League Football is their VP of Media Relations, Nick Athan. They've made some pretty big announcements regarding the future of the league last week, and we have Nick back with us to kind of take us through the details. Hey, Nick, Chris and Bob, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, Nick.
Chris and Bob, guys, thanks for having me on, and apologize I could not appear. We could not come on last week, so apologies to everybody.
No worries. So, Nick, like I say, you guys have you've done some big things or made some big decisions over the last week or so. Kind of take us through what the details are.
Well, I mean, obviously, as everybody knows now, we've decided to push the launch of our first season into 2017 from 2016, and it was not an easy decision by any stretch. It was very difficult. The entire management team, the coaches, and the GMs got together last week, and we ultimately made the decision that we just needed more time to execute the plan properly and really put our best foot forward, not only for the league, but more importantly for the players and the safety of the players and really giving them that opportunity to chase their dream, which is, of course, they all want to play in the NFL. They want another shot. And it was a hard decision. It wasn't easy. It took a lot of time to sort everything through. guys, there's no question there's some kids who are disappointed. There's no question that people are going to look at us and compare us to some of the other leagues that have failed. But, I think once the shock wore off, the response from a lot of the players has been strong. We've even had some guys get some tryouts with NFL teams that were on our rosters. So, it's not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm confident the future still looks good for Major League Football, and we will play ball next year, and we will put a terrific product on the field.
So, Nick, what is the plan for the players now for, the rest of, this calendar year?
Well, we're certainly in communication with all the coaches and have reached out to the players and kind of let them know that just to hang tight. We're going to work on some sort of plan where we can get them together at some point, over the course of this year, get them prepared for 2017 training camp, which will be in Florida in February of 2017. Right now, it's just been that one-on-one communication, letting the guys know that, we understand you're disappointed, but we are going to work and we are going to execute a plan. We have not released any details because we ultimately haven't decided the best course of action, and whether that's going to be, some sort of opportunity in one place or it's an opportunity within the cities themselves. Those are all things that we have to work out logistically, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks we'll be able to do that.
Bob, questions for Nick?
Nick, it's great to speak again, and I believe you're doing the right thing. When we first spoke with you, I said to myself, man, that came around quick. I said, this is something that, it looks like they have everything in place, but man, that was fast. But having read the press release that you're planning for staffing in cities and about ticketing agencies, things like that, it could only probably enhance your chances at success of giving it another year.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob, and thank you for saying that, because I think one thing that people, have to understand is that, we all wanted to do this for the players. We all want to do this for these kids. I mean, I've been on your show before, and you know how I feel about these kids and the relationships that we forged. You know what? It was a Herculean task to put everything together as quickly as we tried to, and it was the wrong thing. It was we had the right idea and the right desire, but it just didn't fit, and it just didn't work into the time capsule that we had. And by allowing more time, we can really be community-centric in our markets. We can spend more time with the players. And I think one thing that, I think everybody has to understand too, and one of the things that I think ultimately was one of the deciding factors for us pushing it off a year was when we hired a new medical advisor about a month and a half ago, that we just didn't feel like we could put everything on the field the way we wanted to with the players, making sure they came to camp in the right shape, making sure that everything was done. And by pushing and forcing and trying to squeeze in a box, we really felt that player safety would be something that could be compromised, and we just can't accept that under any circumstance. And now we'll have the time to really vet these guys out, do the medical things that we need to do, and make sure they come to camp in the right shape, in the right mindset, and understand fully what's expected of them. And it allows us more time to get to know the kids from the coaches level.
Nick, is there any fear at all of the over 600 players that you have losing some due to the delayed start, maybe having other opportunities on their plate or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some players that have asked for releases, and we've had some players that have went ahead and gone with other leagues. And as I mentioned, a few guys have gotten opportunities in some NFL camps or some NFL tryouts, which is great, which is something that we're not going to not allow kids that if they get an opportunity. That's always been the case. But, I think that the fact that a lot of the players have stuck with it and the coaches have been able to communicate properly. And, we'll have other pro days, later on this year and other tryouts available for kids that, didn't get the opportunity. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've been flooded with phone calls and emails from guys who want to try out, even with the news, new guys. And since we cut off our camps back in December, we probably had over 1,000 kids contact us. So the good news is that more kids are going to get an opportunity, and I think that's just going to make for a better product. But we're obviously, again, these kids mean the world to us, and we know we've disappointed them, and we know it's been very difficult for them. But, we want to do things the right way. All we want to do is help them advance their careers as best we can.
And Nick, I think you guys have been talking about this year as a developmental year, both for the league and for the players. What does that mean, a developmental year? I know you've talked about how, hey, you want to get everything lined up and all that sort of thing, but is there a developmental plan for the players as well?
Yeah, I think so. Like I mentioned before, we're going to put together some sort of camp for these kids. The coaches are going to be in communication with them. We're going to set up some programs. We're going to try to do things, kind of the way, the NFL does it. Have organized workouts of some kind, and make sure that we get these kids in the right mindset, in the right shape. And, also the developmental, also works on the executive level, on the management level, and the city level. I mean, had we done this the other way and really tried to cram all that 2-3 months, we may not have been able to implement some of the programs. We may not been able to build the relationships in the markets and the cities and with the venues that we need to. And, it's a learning and developmental process for everybody involved. But, obviously the proof is in the pudding, and the proof is going to be the product on the field. And now that we do have more time to be able to do it, we're just going to make sure we do it right.
And as you mentioned venues, Nick, is there a timetable now for announcing what cities will be hosting teams?
Yeah, we are in the process of finalizing our leases as we speak. Obviously, we've had to change the dates, and right now we're looking into available dates for the season for 2017. We hope over the next few weeks that we'll be able to announce, if not all the cities, certainly most of those cities. Our venues are excited to have us. We haven't had any of them who've shown any desire to not work with Major League Football. And, in fact, we've had other opportunities with different venues, new venues potentially as well, to maybe expand, though I don't think that's going to be the case in our first year.
So for the skeptics out there, Nick, talk about how financially sound the league is and how ready you guys are for next season.
Well, I think the financial prospects are really strong. We've made some announcements on that front. We've had other individuals and other groups who have come to the table wanting to get involved on a financial basis with Major League Football. And these are all things that we're exploring. And, with the skeptics going to be the skeptics, an interesting conversation that we had, Herm Edwards, who's our senior advisor, we had some meetings with him, and he said, listen, you're going to have all the skeptics in the world, but once you put that training camp together, once you play that first game, all that stuff goes away. And quite honestly, we understand that the skeptics are out there, and we're not going to hide from it. We're not going to recognize that it's not something that's there. But, once we do those things, we announce our cities, we put our logos out there, we start working in the communities, and people see that it's real. I think our perception will change. But, we have some work to do, and we have some fences to mend, and we're certainly willing, all of us are willing to do whatever it takes to try and ease some of those skeptics' concerns and make sure ultimately that we put these kids in a position to play football again.
Bob, more for Nick?
Yeah, Nick, and no matter how hard you're working on the Major League Football stuff, it's not going to affect your work itself, both with them and off the Major League area, because you've told us the last show how incredibly involved you are in other things, especially about some of the underprivileged work you've done with kids in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Tell our listeners more about that.
Well, I mean, I've always felt a kinship. I work with a group in Kansas City called Higher Ground, and we try and help the inner city kids get an opportunity to get a better education. We really work hard at trying to teach them, things that they don't get in the classroom, and obviously we program to stay away from drugs and all those things. And you have to get back. And the position that we're all in, me personally and the guys in Major League Football and a lot of the guys that are involved, they've always worked in the community. They've always given back. And, look what you guys are doing with the Gridiron Greats. It's one of the greatest organizations in football. And the whole theme is to give back and help as many people as possible. So for me personally, it's a great organization. I've certainly enjoyed my time working with them. And, we hope to set up a lot of programs like that, hopefully, in other quadrants of the world and certainly in the United States as we develop these franchises.
Nick, let everyone know as well, for those that want to get involved and be a part of Major League Football, you guys are publicly traded. You're an over-the-counter stock. Tell them how they can do that.
Well, basically, we are an over-the-counter stock, an OTC stock. and the calls symbol is MLFB. And for people that are interested in potentially being stockholders in Major League Football, they can certainly go to E-Trade or call their broker or Merrill Lynch or whoever they have a brokerage account with, and have an opportunity to invest and watch the company grow.
And remind our listeners, Nick, how they can stay up to date with everything that's going on and keep track of you guys both online and over social media as well.
Well, MLFB.com is our website, and on Twitter it's MLFB Official, and on Facebook Major League Football. So, we ask people that they can comment, they can say what they want, the good, the bad, the ugly. We're all good with it. We want people to have a voice, but we do our best to try and update the information and ask as many questions as we can. But there will be more news coming out of Major League Football here very soon.
That's good news. Nick, thanks so much. We're deeply in your guys' corner. We're looking forward to, everything as it develops, over the course of the rest of this year, and looking forward to 2017 and everything that you guys put together and getting the product out on the field. That we can't thank you enough for being a part of the show tonight and coming on and sharing all the updates with us. And we look forward to catching up with you guys again real soon.
Well, guys, I appreciate it very much. We love doing the show every week, and we appreciate your support and you're working with us, and good things ahead for both of us.
I couldn't agree more with that. Nick, thanks again for being here. All the best to you and your family, my friend. We look forward to the opportunity to catch up with you again real soon.
All right,
thanks for having me on. All right, take care.
All right, take care, Nick. That is Nick Athan. He is the VP of Media Relations for Major League Football. Bob, I think you made a really good point. I think, these guys, they tried to get it in for this year. I think there was a high desire to have a product on the field this year. But I think in the long run, it's going to work out better for them, and I think it's going to make the product even better once they take the field next year.
Yeah, you get the feeling talking with Nick, Chris, that they're not in this for the short run, and the more research and the more, like we said, it's all about marketing, and just think about what a year it gives them, how much more will be in place to make money, and questions will be answered. You don't want to rush in and just do it on a whim like that. So totally the correct thing to do. And I think they'll probably be 50% stronger doing it this way. So, again, I think this is great news.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're going to get to our next guest, Tony Collins, on the other side of this word from our friends over at Kyvan Foods.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcon tight end, and I'm the owner of Kyvan Foods. And if you enjoy delicious food, you're going to love my Kyvan products, which consist of our honey apple salsa, sweet barbecue sauce, and an array of seasonings. For store locations, online orders, and recipes, check out our website at www.kyvan82.com. That's KYVAN 82.com. One taste, and you'll appreciate the goodness.
Hey guys, this is Dr. Jen Welter of the Texas Revolution and Team USA, and you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with my good friends Chris Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line, fresh off his vacation in the Bahamas, where we learned they don't have phones, so he couldn't join us last week, is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. Hey, Tony, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Tony. Chris, Bob, how you guys doing?
Oh, really good.
They actually have phones, but the last time we went over there, I had my phone on him, and when I got back home, I had this big phone bill, so my wife said I had to turn my phone off while I was over there this time. So, you got to listen to what your wife says, though. Happy wife, happy life. You know what I mean?
Ah, there you go. So, Tony, I wanted to start our time with you this week by getting your thoughts about a guy that you played alongside with the Patriots, a Patriot legend, really, and that's former running back Sam Cunningham. He was still a part of the team in the early 80s when you got there. What do you remember about playing alongside Sam at the end of his career?
He was a professional. I shared a locker right by him. Running backs were pretty much together, and I had Sam Cunningham on one side of me, and I had Mosi Tupu on the other side of me. And Sam was just a professional, in and out all the way. A great person, You can tell he cared about you genuinely. The thing that I remember the most with Sam is he taught me. He made sure that when the meetings started, he always told me. Well, I already knew this, but he always told me, make sure you're in the meeting 15 minutes before the meeting starts. So that's something that I grew up with, and so he was just always giving me different type of hints and different type of things to do. He taught me a lot about blocking as well, and so just a great person, man. I haven't seen Sam in probably about 2 years now. I've talked to him on the phone a couple of times, but just a great football player, but even a greater person, and that's what I remember about Sam. I got the opportunity to only play 1 year with him, my rookie season, and but he was just a professional. That's the word for him. He was a professional on and off the field.
And Tony, I wanted to sort of get your general thoughts now about the running back position. It used to be like when you came in the league, and prior to that, 60s, 70s, it used to be a glamour position, maybe even more so than the quarterbacks a lot of time because of the great running backs that came up through those decades. And now it's sort of been greatly devalued based on perhaps the rules changes. It opens up the passing game a little bit more. Running backs seem to have a shorter lifespan than they did. Why do teams value it so much less than they used to, do you think?
Well, you know what? I don't think it's so much the teams now. I think it's more the league. Everybody wants to see the scoring. They want to see the passing. They made a lot of different rules for defensive backs to make it harder for the defensive backs, so the receivers can get open. There are times when I know my rookie season, the defensive backs, man, they jam you in the face and hold you on the line, and that's how it was. But now they can't really do that as much as they did before. And I really think it's just the league. How everybody wants to see the score, everybody wants to see the passing yards or 400 yards, 500 yards, 300 yards, and the running back. Which if you're not a running back that can catch the ball out of the backfield, you are kind of like one dimensional, and you're not going to last long in the league, especially now. I know when I came in the league, I was able to catch the ball out of the backfield and run the ball and be able to block. So having those type of things that I did, I did all three, and I tried to do all three as well as I could. And so that's the type of backs where on third down, those backs that can't catch the ball, they're on the bench on third down. And so they're not that many anymore, but there's a lot of great backs that are playing the game right now. But I just really believe that it's not so much a team thing, but it's more of a league thing, and the passing game is opening up so much now because of the different rules they have now. So they give the quarterback. Of course, you can't hit the quarterback either. So, so now it's more of a passing game. And if you're a running back that can't catch the ball, you're not going to be on the field on third down.
Bob, questions for Tony?
Tony, I'm going to kind of piggyback on Chris. I'm going to ask you about a former teammate and then get back to the position. But I remember that draft in 1980 up here in New England. It was big when they announced Vegas Ferguson. They had watched him at Notre Dame, and they thought he would be good. And he was good in that rookie year, Tony, 800 yards and a couple touchdowns, and he caught passes, too, out of the backfield. And basically after that, Tony, he disappeared. I don't remember what exactly happened to him, but he was out of the league by the time he was 25 years old. What happened to Vegas Ferguson?
Well, I'm going to tell you what happened to him. I happened to him.
Yeah.
Well,
I know you were coming up.
Let me tell you this. My rookie season, I get to New England, right? And so when I get to New England, I look on the depth chart. I'm the third string running back on the team. Now, you got to understand my mindset. I've never been third string anytime I play football. Pop Warner, high school, college, I've never been third string. I've always been first string. Didn't plan on being third string for the New England Patriots either. They just didn't know it yet, right? And so my thing was I'm going to outwork these guys. I was the number 3 running back. Horace Ivory was the number 2 running back, and Vegas Ferguson was the number 1 running back. And so the beginning of training camp come, I'm first one on the field, last one off the field. First one in the weight room, last one out of the weight room. I'm learning the playbook. I'm waiting for my opportunity. The second week of training camp comes in, and Horace Ivory gets hurt. I felt a little bad for Horace. Felt real good for me because now I'm the second string running back on the team. And so third week comes in, fourth week comes in, and Vegas Ferguson goes down with an ankle. I felt a little bad for Vegas. Felt real good for Tony, but now I'm the number 1 running back. I get to start my first game of my career against the Baltimore Colts. I had 18 carries for 89 yards, 4 catches for 39 yards, and I never gave my job back to those guys. And that second year when Ron Earhart got fired my rookie season, after my rookie season, and Ron Myers came in my second year. Vegas Ferguson and Horace Ivory, both of those guys came back, but I stayed healthy and I never gave my position up. And they eventually got Horace Ivory got released during my second year, and Vegas stayed the whole year, but he never played.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm not saying that I was better running back than Vegas. I just took advantage of the opportunity, and that's what I did, man. When I got that opportunity to start, I said to myself, I'm not gonna give him this position back. Hey, you guys ain't gonna take. I was gonna outwork everybody. I was gonna outwork Vegas. I was gonna outwork Horace, and so it worked out well for me.
And, Tony, Chris and I often talk about the strength of these running backs and the position, how big these guys can be, how strong they can be. It's almost like they're bodybuilders that are able to run the football, Tony. It's got to that point. I was just wondering, when you were even in college and in the pros, was the weight room something that is a total necessity for a running back?
The weight room was big. Weight room was always a big thing for me, but now there's so many different things that that the trainers are doing. Back when we played, the nutrition thing. I mean, we ate hamburgers and hot dogs and all this other kind of stuff. Now these guys are eating these different nutritional things and taking these all these other things. And now you see a back now that's 6'2", 240 pounds, running a 4.40. That's unheard of back when we were playing, But now you got backs that can do that, and I think it's a lot of it because of the different type of training that they have. They're jumping over different ropes and doing things. All we did was go in the weight room, we bench press, we did squats, and that's it. Maybe ran stadium steps. But all the different things that they're doing now, as far as the training, and it's gotten so huge, different training aspects that goes into it, making those guys bigger, stronger, and faster. So it's definitely gone to a whole nother level than what we had coming back. All we had was the bench press and the squats, and that's all we did, and that's all we knew. But yeah, it's totally different. You got guys now that are 6'2", 240, running a 4.40, which is incredible.
And Tony, getting back to the idea or back to the thought about the position of running back, and so many people now in the media talk about how the game of football is so much different than it used to be. But when you get right down to it, Tony, when you look at how Carolina got to the Super Bowl, it was based on how well they ran the football and played really good defense. Denver, same sort of thing when they won the Super Bowl based on running the football and playing great defense. Is the game really that much different? Is the recipe that much different to winning a Super Bowl now than it used to be?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. You see more of the passing because of the different rules, but you always see in the end, maybe except with New England, because we never run the ball well, but we always see in the end those teams that win the Super Bowls, they win the Super Bowl because of their defense, because they're able to run the ball, and they have a quarterback that can handle the game. When you have those criteria, you have that on your team: a good defense, a running game, and a quarterback that doesn't make mistakes, that can control the ball. I mean, you can win Super Bowls. I mean, what's I can't remember the guy's name from Baltimore Ravens. Was it Trent Dilfer?
Right.
Trent Dilfer won the Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer. Okay, come on now. Okay, but it was defense, and they ran the ball, and he controlled the game. And so when you have all those three areas covered, and you can go a long way in the playoffs, and you can win a Super Bowl. And that's just how it is, and that's not going to ever change. The teams that get to the Super Bowl are the teams that have a good defense. If you don't have a good defense, you are not getting to the Super Bowl. I don't care how you slice it. If you don't have a good enough defense, you are not going to make it to the Super Bowl.
We are talking to former Patriots running back Tony Collins here on Thursday Night Tailgate. And Tony, I wanted to get a little more personal with you about your career. And I was reading a couple of old articles, and the Best of Boston Readers Poll named you the best athlete back in 1984 in the city of Boston. Talk about your relationship then and now with the fans in Boston and around New England.
Oh, it was fantastic then, and it's even more. I think it's even better now. Some of the things that I went through in my life, you guys know my story. And now what I'm doing, going back in the community, going back into the schools, and telling my story to these kids and helping these kids get interested in colleges, and we're giving out scholarships. I think it's even better than it was back then, because now I'm really affecting lives. You know what I mean? So I probably affected some lives playing football with the fans and everything, but now I'm really doing something that's really special to me and to the community, and it's so just remarkable when you have a kid come up to you or a parent come up to you and say thank you, that you changed my son's life, and you helped my son get from point A to point B by what you're doing and by what you're saying and giving back. And that's what it's all about, Chris. I mean, it's right now for me, it's all about giving back and helping as many people as possible. God gave me an opportunity to play a game that I love. It's a game. It's a game. It's that's all it is. It's just a game. It's a game that I love. A lot of people love the game, and I got the opportunity to play that game. And now I have a bigger opportunity to affect lives in a positive way. That's
great stuff, Tony. Bob, one more for Tony before we let him go.
And Tony, just staying on that same subject about affecting lives, and we've probably touched on this before, but I was reading this week that Johnny Manziel was reached out by Gary Kubiak, who was a former Texas A&M guy and also another player on the team, I think, that had played at that school. And it wasn't necessarily had interest in signing him, Tony. It was more of him as a man and where his life is headed. Having been through a lot of stuff yourself, what do you think would be the best thing for him in the long run, Tony? Would it be to try to hook on with somebody? Would it be to do what you're doing? I mean, have kids learn how he it's not like this guy is 30 years old yet. So I don't know. Where do you think his life is headed?
It's hard to put a finger on it. I know one thing, he's making choices, and that's one thing that, life's all about choices that you make. I don't care how great a football player you are, how great a person you are. If you're making bad choices, you're putting yourself in bad situations, bad things are going to happen. And this is just what's happening with him right now. Football is an escape for a lot of players. And when I was out there in the world and I was playing football, but when I went through a lot of the different things in my life with the painkillers and the different drugs that I was using, football was my escape, and that's how I kind of got away from everything. And I think right now with Johnny, one of the things that he needs to do is pretty much I don't say for him to leave the game, but he needs to get with someone that can kind of kind of mentor him and kind of teach him a little bit about what his responsibility is. As a football player, when you make it to this level, you have a responsibility. I don't care how you slice it up. And a lot of guys say, I'm not a role model. Well, you are a role model because you got all these kids all over the country looking at you and dreaming to be just like you. So whether you want to do it or not, you are a role model. You are a role model, so you just have to accept that because you made it to this level, so you got to be a role model, and I think that's the thing that Johnny has to understand, that everything that he does, everybody's looking at. They're looking at everything that he does, and so it hasn't been good on the field, hasn't been good off the field, and so I'm hoping and believing for him that everything will turn around for him. I don't know if he's going to get picked up by anybody. Hopefully he does, and maybe it might be good for him to sit out a year. I don't know, but I just hope the kid turns his life around. Most importantly, turns his life around for the better. I don't care how many touchdowns he throws, but I hope that he turns his life around for the best.
And Tony, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can follow you both online and over social media as well.
TonyCollinsProjects.com, TonyCollinsFoundation.com. We got a lot of great things going on, and I'm just absolutely thrilled about what's going on down the line. I'm so excited. We got a golf tournament in New England. We got a golf tournament down here in North Carolina. We got a golf tournament in my hometown. We're raising a whole bunch of money and helping a lot of kids to go off to college.
That's great stuff, Tony. Thank you so much for being back with us, Tony. We always look forward to catching up with you and having you as part of the show. We look forward to next week. In the meantime, my friend, all the best to you and your family.
Take it easy, Tony.
You guys have a great night. God bless.
Take care, Tony.
Good night.
That is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins, and doing some great stuff in the communities and sharing some great stories about some of the Patriot legends that he had the opportunity to play with. So we look forward to catching up with Tony again next week. We've got our next guest, Gary Barnidge, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Gary on the other side of this station identification.
This is Christine Lisi, and you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL stars go to tell their stories with Chris Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Gary Barnidge. Let me give you some background on Gary. He's from Bowling Green, Kentucky, played his college ball at the University of Louisville, where he was named a first-team All-Big East player in 2007. Over his 48 games at Louisville, he had 108 receptions for just under 1,500 yards, and he scored 17 touchdowns. He was a fifth-round draft pick in 2008 by the Carolina Panthers, where he played from 2008 to 2012. Signed by the Cleveland Browns as an unrestricted free agent in 2013, and last season exploded onto the scene with 125 targets, 79 receptions for 1,043 yards. He scored 9 touchdowns, which tied Ozzie Newsome's franchise record. Last season selected as a Pro Bowl player, and we are very honored that he is with us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Gary, Chris, and Bob here. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Gary, first, I saw you took a trip over to Egypt recently with several other players on behalf of American Football Without Barriers. Talk about what that event was all about.
Oh, it was awesome. So it's an organization that me and the starting right tackle Jets, Brandon Giacomini, another one of our college buddies, Ahmed Awadallah, started 5 years ago. And we go overseas internationally and do football camps for kids and do free camps and just try and teach the sport to kids that watch it, but they don't really understand the exact rules of playing it. And we try to help build the sport internationally while also doing a humanitarian effort of visiting orphanages, spending time with kids, giving back to them. And we donated shoes one year. And this year we went and visited a cancer hospital and spent time with kids and showing them that there's people out there that do care for them and want to spend time with them and see them and give them another avenue outside of other things in life.
Now, Gary, I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm a big Steelers fan, so I got to ask. I saw you video bombing my boy D'Angelo Williams while he was giving a shout out to Steeler Nation. Now, what's up with that?
Me and D'Angelo have a great relationship from back in the Carolina days. But we've known each other for 8 years now. We've gone to 7 WrestleManias in a row together, so we have a great relationship. And he never knew I was going to do it. And it's a friendly rivalry between the Browns and Steelers. We obviously have a little rivalry going. So when they said that he was going to film his little video spew for the Steelers thing, I was like, there's no way I got to let this go without doing something. So I had to go do something, which was awesome. It was a lot of fun. And we actually just made a little video today, too, that we posted. So you'll have a little fun with that.
All right. I look forward to watching that. So, Gary, let's go back to your time at the University of Louisville. First as a kid from Bowling Green, Kentucky, was that always the plan to go to Louisville, or I have to imagine University of Kentucky, Bowling Green itself, got to be a lot of other schools that were interested in your services as well.
Well, I was born in Kentucky, but I only lived there for like 6 months, and then I moved. I grew up in Fordham the rest of my life, for the most part. So, being there is just Louisville was the first school that recruited me. They recruited me going into my sophomore year of high school, and they stuck with me the whole time. And then schools came in my senior year, and I think it was just the commitment that they showed me so early. And then the chance I was going to get a chance to play right away as a freshman, that had a little bit of a factor in it as well. And plus, both Petrinos sold me on the school. And the school was amazing. I had an amazing time there, and I don't regret it at all.
And as you mentioned, you played for Bobby Petrino at Louisville, and we hear an awful lot about him for what was going on sort of off the field. But what was it like playing for him?
Oh, it was awesome. He is a fiery guy, and he knows he's an offensive genius. That's the only way I can put it, because he knows everything that's going to happen when you're out there on the offense wise. It's so good. It gets you prepared for the NFL too, because he runs a pro style offense. So everything comes easy. You have to learn so much so quick in his offense. So when you get to the NFL, everything comes easy learning-wise. And I think that's a tremendous thing that he does.
Bob, questions for Gary?
Yes, Gary, it's a pleasure to speak with you. And when you got to Carolina, your coach was John Fox, who's very familiar to the people up here in the New York area, Gary. And we always thought of him as a defensive genius, and here you are playing for him as a tight end, as an offensive player. How was your relationship with him being a defensive coach? How did you get along with him? We've heard so many good things about him as a head coach.
Yeah, I honestly, there's not a bad thing I could say about him. The guy was awesome. He was great to be around, and he was just a great coach to have, and I truly appreciated him drafting me and all that kind of stuff. And it was a pleasure to work for him, and I still keep in touch with him. When we saw him last year, when we played Chicago, I talked to him. I'll see him again this year when we play him. So he's a great coach, and I like talking to him.
And Chris had already mentioned your exploits of this past season, Gary. Amazing. You blossomed. Not that you had any different talent than you did before, but you blossomed at age 30. Was it just a thing about you getting the ball? Was it that simple?
I think honestly, I just think it all was opportunity. And previously in my career, I've been behind Pro Bowlers, behind Greg Olsen and Jordan Cameron. So I just never had that opportunity to show what I could do. I've shown flashes before, but this was my first time to actually show everything. And I just want to take full advantage of it. And the thing with it is, I know there's guys on all other teams that are in the same boat. So my only message would be, you got to just keep fighting, keep doing everything that you do, and when your opportunity comes, you have to take full advantage of it, because you might not ever get it again. So you have to take full advantage of it when you get the chance.
And Gary, I was go back to a little bit more of your time at Louisville. When I look back at the 2004 and the 2006 seasons, you guys are a 3-point loss to Miami away from running the table in 2004, and including a 4-point win over undefeated number 10 ranked Boise State in the Liberty Bowl in 2004. Again, a 3-point loss to Rutgers, so 6 points away from having 2 undefeated seasons. When you look back at those 2 seasons, do you guys in your former team, do you ever wonder if we just would have had a playoff system back then, what could have happened?
Oh, it could have been crazy, and that's the thing about it. That's what's so good about having the playoff system now. But I think it should be extended a little bit, maybe 6 teams instead of 4, because then you're really going to get a true understanding of it. And we obviously want those 6 points back. We missed that opportunity, but that's just a credit to our team. We played good together, and it was a great experience overall at Louisville, and a lot of that's the credit to Petrino.
And Gary, as credit to you. You're drafted in the 5th round back in 2008 by the Panthers, and there aren't a lot of 5th round draft picks that make the team. Talk about what did you do to capture the attention of the coaches?
I think just coming in and trying to learn the offense as quick as possible. That was something I prided myself on when I came to Louisville, because when I came in, there was only a senior, and there was me and another freshman, and we knew we had to play right away. So we both focused on learning the offense, and we learned it in the first week. And that's not something that's easily done. It takes a lot of study, and I think that's something I wanted to bring into when I got drafted, to make sure I know what I'm doing at all times, so that if you call on me, I'm ready.
Bob, more for Gary?
Yeah, that's pretty much was my question, Gary, as far as, and Chris knows, I've asked this to every tight end that's come on this show, is the intelligence that is needed at that position. It's kind of, the in the trenches type mentality, but you have to know blocking schemes. You have to be able to run patterns. To me, the tight end, and I'm not tooting your horn or any others, it's just to me, the tight end has to be one of the most intelligent people out on that field.
Well, I would say tight end position is definitely an underlooked position. A lot of people see it, they're a receiver guy. This is the blocking guy. They get categorized as one thing. But every tight end has to know everything on the field, because you can line up a receiver, you can line up in the backfield, you can line up at tackle at times. You got to know all the calls that the quarterbacks are going to make to the receiver. You got to know all the calls that the line makes. You get to know literally everything in the offense. There's not just one thing you need to focus on, and that's something people don't really take in effect. That you have to do that, and then you also start to block the elite pass rushers like the tackles do. Then you start to outrun the safeties and the linebackers like the receivers do. So it's a mix of everything, and a lot of people just miss that, and I think that's why we get underlooked a lot in general. And then everybody gets categorized as, there's a receiver, he's a blocker, and I don't think that's how guys are. I think they just get put that way because that's the way we want to categorize people.
And Gary, what's the off season been like? I mean, after you take those few weeks off, the bumps and bruises heal a little bit. Did you get right back into it?
No, I take a little bit of time off. I like to travel, so I actually went to Australia, New Zealand. I went to Egypt for my camp, and then just spending time with the family and get your body rest, rejuvenate, and then you get back into it, and then you report back for the off-season workouts, and that's what we just started this week.
And Gary, when you look around at all that has gone on in your 3 years in Cleveland, do you ever wonder? Now you got a new head coach there. You got RG3 is coming over there, but prior to that, did you think ahead a little bit and kind of wonder what the plan was in Cleveland?
No, you can't really worry about that, because all you can do is show up and do what you're supposed to do. Go show up to work every day, give your best effort, and just be ready and have trust in the team you're on, and know that things are going to turn around. And that's what I have whole faith in. I wouldn't sign back if I didn't believe it. I want to be in Cleveland when we turn it around.
And as you mentioned about, rivalry when you're talking about D'Angelo Williams and the Steelers, you got, 3 other teams in the AFC North have been making regular trips to the playoffs over the last decade. Steelers and Browns Steelers and Ravens have won some Super Bowls. How tough is it competing for wins when you've got 3 other teams that are making regular trips to the playoffs in your own division?
I think it's very tough, but that's also what makes our division so good. Everybody is good. The games are so much fun, and there's such big rivalries we see on the games. So every game is a huge part of every season, and we play each other twice. So it's just helping bring the talent up for each team too, and to help us beat other divisions when that time comes. So I think that's a huge benefit to our whole division.
And, Gary, like I said, I'm a Steelers fan. I'm born in Pittsburgh, and, back in the day, the Steelers and the Browns were, the most bitter of rivals. Now, when they moved off and went to Baltimore, you got the Ravens, and that's a really big deal. When you guys are playing and you're looking around the division, is one team a more bitter rival to you guys? Is it the in-state thing with the Bengals? Is there still that rivalry with the Steelers from back in the day, or do you guys look at the Baltimore Ravens with a bit more disdain because they used to be the Cleveland Browns?
I think everyone's different. We obviously have the rival with all of them, but I think everybody's going to be different. If you ask the fans, some fans are, oh, Steelers, that's the guy, we have to beat the Steelers. But then you ask other fans, and then it's going to be, oh, that you have to beat the Ravens because when they left and went to Baltimore. And then Cincy, oh, it's the Battle of Ohio, we need to win that. So I think everybody has their different views on it. I just think it's a great rivalry between all the teams. All 4 teams despise each other. They all want to beat each other, and it just makes it such good football.
And Gary, before we let you go, and we talked about this at the onset about your organization, American Football Without Barriers. Talk to let them know what the organization is all about, how they can find out more information and get involved with it.
So we have a website called afwbcamp.com, and then we also have social media on Twitter and Instagram. It's afwbcamp as well. And if you want to join, if you want to be a part of it, all you got to do is go in there, look it up. We have a lot of videos and stuff like that. We do camps in Florida and Louisville. Our first one's going to be in Louisville this summer, and then we do one in Boston, and then we do an international camp every year. We go overseas, do a free football camp for kids, and then also do a humanitarian effort by visiting kids and orphanages and hospitals and just giving back to the communities.
And Gary, let our listeners know how they can follow you both online and over social media as well.
It's my name, Gary Barnidge, at everything. So if it's Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, it's Gary Barnidge. It's very easy to find.
There you go. Gary, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to join us. It was great having you as part of the show. We hope you'll come back and join us again sometime to share more of your stories and insights with us. You're fantastic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all having me on. Y'all have a good night.
All right, take care, Gary. All the best to you and your family.
All right, thank you. Bye.
That was Cleveland Browns Pro Bowl tight end Gary Barnidge. And, Bob, we talk about a lot of things on this show over and over again. One, enthusiasm in the guy's voice. We love to hear that. Plus, a guy that's doing some really great things off the field. I can see another time when we will be turning the Thursday Night Tailgate spotlight on the positive on Gary Barnidge. We've already done it once this year, but I'm sure we'll be doing it again.
Yeah, we did mention that a few weeks ago, Chris. He gets it done off the field as well. But, man, what a great story. 5th-round draft pick, now one of the best tight ends out there. And, again, you wonder, we didn't get into Manziel with him, but if Johnny Manziel had this kind of guy's dedication and work ethic and focus, where he could go. But this guy at age 30 is in his prime right now, and I expect similar things next year, Chris.
Yeah, no, I expect so too. Again, a guy that, sort of came from out of nowhere and exploded onto the scene like you talked about, Bob. But, you look at his athleticism and the guy's fantastic. I'm sure he's going to be scaring defenses down the seam for many years to come.
Yep.
All right, coming up in hour number 2 of Thursday Night Tailgate, sponsored by Kyvan Foods, Coastal Orthopedics, the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, and the French Lick Resort. We're going to have Packers All-Pro kicker Chris Jacke back with us, and former Saints, 49ers, and Panthers defensive back Toy Cook is going to be here. We're going to get to Chris Jacke on the other side of this word from our friends over at Coastal Orthopedics and the French Lick Resort.
Are you suffering from chronic pain in your shoulders, hips, knees, or wrists? Tired of living life with an old injury that just won't go away? If you answered yes to either of these questions, we can help. At Coastal Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dr. Candelora and his fine staff of medical professionals will get you back on the road to recovery. Their state-of-the-art facility and attention to detail will ensure you will be enjoying life again and feeling invincible in no time. Since 1991, Dr. Candelora and Coastal Orthopedics have been specializing in joint replacement, arthritis, and osteoporosis care, as well as pediatric and adult general orthopedics. Visit us on the web, www.bone-dr.com, or call our Newport Richey office just north of Tampa at 727-848-1417. Proud sponsors of Mike Ditka's The Gridiron Greats Assistance Fund.
Now's the time to plan that golf getaway you've been dreaming about at French Lick Resort. We have new Golf Academy packages for 2016, guaranteed to take your game to the next level. Try our one-day Quick Fix Academy for golf emergencies. For more in-depth learning, try the Game Changer, designed to make you a better player. Our staff professionals are ready to work with you at French Lick Resort. Did you know there's only one place in the country that you can play courses designed by two members of the World Golf Hall of Fame on the same property? The Pete Dye and Donald Ross courses at French Lick Resort make us an ultimate golf destination for 2016. Check out the Ultimate Golf Package, the Hall of Fame Package, and other great offerings at FrenchLick.com. Let 2016 be that year you finally take your dream golf getaway at French Lick Resort. Play the courses champions play.
Hey, welcome back. This is Todd Washington, two-time Super Bowl champ, offensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and you are listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with my boys Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network. Go get them, guys.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is former Packers All-Pro kicker Chris Jacke. Let me remind you about Chris's background. He's from Richmond, Virginia, played his college ball at the University of Texas at El Paso. He was a sixth-round draft pick by the Green Bay Packers in 1989, and he played in the NFL from 89 to 99 for the Packers, Redskins, and Cardinals. He also had a cup of coffee with my Steelers, and I bet if he could have dusted off the number 13 jersey last year, boy, we sure could have used him when it looked pretty dire for our kicking situation. He was named a first-team All-Pro player back in 1993, helped the Packers to a 13-3 record in 1996 and a win in Super Bowl 31 over the New England Patriots. He was inducted into the Packers Hall of Fame back in July of 2013, and it is great to have him back with us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a while. It's good to be back on.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And Chris, before we get into all the football stuff, you and your organization, Player Alumni Resources, you guys have got a great event coming up at the beginning of June that I'm sure all of our listeners are going to be very interested in, particularly our listeners on the Armed Forces Radio Network, our military personnel listening in around the world. Give us the details about that event.
Absolutely. We're real excited. We're doing a fishing event. You know, everyone does golfing events and golf outings. And, you know, leave it to a kicker to do things differently, of course. So I've been putting together a golf outing the last couple of years. And this year we're raising funds and awareness for Wisconsin Stars and Stripes Honor Flight. And what they do is they provide air travel from anywhere. I mean, this one in particular from Wisconsin, but they're all over the country. They provide air travel for veterans from World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, all the way up through Iraq and so forth in the Middle East. And they provide them transportation back to Washington, D.C., just to let them go back and look at the monuments, you know, see names of their fallen comrades on the walls, and just give those guys an opportunity to get back to and just appreciate everything that they've done for them. So we're real excited. We've got about a dozen Packer alumni coming, you know, anywhere from Jerry Kramer back in the 60s all the way up to Amon Green, who played here in the early 2000s. So we're real excited. It's going on just north of Milwaukee in a small port called Port Washington, and we're real excited. We're going to have a good time. If the weather ever gets nice up here in Wisconsin, we're still talking snow this weekend, so we may be ice fishing instead. We're not sure.
and Chris, for folks that want to get all the details and that sort of thing, where can they go online to find it?
Yeah, they can go right to the website. It's playeralumniresources.com. They can follow me on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn, all that social media stuff, or just Google my name. All that stuff pops up. But the easiest way is to go right to the website, playeralumniresources.com.
All right, great. And Chris, you're kind of getting back onto the field a little bit. We had Alan Johnson, who's the Lambeau Field manager. He's been on the show with us a couple of times, and we talked to him about all the technology that they have now to take care of Lambeau Field. I'm curious, you know, from your experience, how does the Lambeau Field of today compare to the Lambeau Field that you actually played on?
The technology I played with, it was, you know, it gets kind of nasty up here in December or January if we were fortunate enough to make the playoffs. And how they made our field so we wouldn't slip around, it was a bag of cat litter, you know, just to give us some traction.
Is that right?
Absolutely. You know, I remember seeing those guys just throwing bags and bags of cat litter. I mean, they had an electrical system underneath the field, but they couldn't keep it on during the game because they didn't know where all the coils were. So it's kind of a scary thought running around with cleats or studs on, and you step out on a coil and you're going to see a guy jump about 10 feet in the air. So they couldn't keep those coils on to keep the field playable. So they threw cat litter out there to give us some traction. But I've been fortunate enough to go through a couple of Lambeau Field tours here in the last few years, and the technology over there is just incredible. I think they've got, hundreds of miles of PV piping with pumping hot water through the field, and it's quite a bit different. And even during the winter, they're growing grass over there at Lambeau Field. It isn't just a growing season when it warms up here. They keep some kind of heating system, lighting system, to have the ability to grow grass year-round. It's quite a bit different from when I played.
Yeah, I imagine it is. And speaking about quite a bit different, Chris, when you came into the league, kickers that were making, 75% of their field goals were pretty darn good.
Right.
And today guys are making, well over 80% of it. Why are kickers so much better now than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago?
Well, I think you can just look at every position. I think every position, it just makes sense that the athletes are getting better. I mean, that includes kickers. I know a lot of people out there don't think we're athletes, but we really are. The players are getting better. I mean, every position, they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, and that just holds true for kickers. Like you said, I think, I'm friends with Chester Markle and Jan Stenerud, who played in the 60s and 70s, and, good for those guys was 65% or 70%. And while, like you said, when I played, it was 75% was the threshold. Now, if you kick below 80% or 85% in the league today, you're at home watching it on the TV. So it's just I think it's generational. Just the guys are getting better. They're getting paid better. I think you hit me. Just the money's ridiculous. God love them. But every generation says that. I know when I first met Chester and Jan Stenerud back when I was playing, they made $10,000 or $12,000 when they were playing as rookies and first-year players, and I was making a big $69,000. And I'd say I don't know if that buys a car for these guys today. So a little bit different game today.
Bob, questions for Chris?
And Chris, we always like to laud the all-around athletes here. And before you got the full-time NFL gig, maybe you want to tell our listeners what other sports you were involved with, what levels you played at, because I know did more than.
Absolutely. I grew up, obviously most kickers nowadays, they have a background in soccer. I started playing soccer when I was 5 years old. And, I played it right up through high school and played club soccer down in Dallas. And I was playing club soccer in high school, or club soccer, then playing high school soccer. Just love the sport. I still love watching it. My youngest son's playing it in college right now and does pretty well at it. But, I thought we had a pretty good team when I was, in that 15, 16-year-old range. In fact, we played at the Dallas Cup, and there might be some people out there that recognize the tournament down in Dallas they have every year. It's one of the biggest youth tournaments in the world, and we actually won the Dallas Cup 1 and 2. So we played pretty well soccer, and I just played football. I just kicked the football, and the opportunity for a scholarship came up, and I didn't come from a wealthy family, and it really helped out my family to get the scholarship for football, and it worked out okay, I think.
And Chris, I don't think we've spoke to you about the extra point. I mean, you were one of those guys that just never missed. You went actually years at a time not missing them. I mean, they should have just made you throw it through the uprights. But now with the little strategy involved, I just wanted to get your spin on it. Would you like to have been kicking now? Would have been more interesting for you? Just give us a little bit of that.
Well, I didn't have a problem with them moving the extra point back. The only drawback I think it had was with those teams or those kickers that played up north. Green Bay, Cleveland, New England. It's a little bit different than the dome teams or the teams that play in the South, where they just don't know what cold weather is. So, but I mean, actually, the Mason Crosby up here in Green Bay didn't miss this year, and I know I think you mentioned Pittsburgh at the top of the show here that they needed a kicker. Sounds like they didn't do very well, and I know the guy in Minnesota kicking in a dome missed a few indoors. So it's, I think it brought a little excitement back. Guys are so good, they rarely miss.
And Chris, when you talk about, you guys are still dealing with some cold temperatures and snow and that sort of thing up there, and having kicked in Lambeau Field for 8 years in the frigid conditions. When you watched or you heard about Blair Walsh's miss from 27 yards in the frigid conditions up there in Minnesota against Seattle last year in the postseason. What went through your mind?
I couldn't believe he missed it. I know it's never an excuse, but that was probably the worst hold I'd ever seen in my entire life. I mean,
is that right?
But even from it's not. I mean, from that distance, it's not typically an excuse. But when it's that cold, I mean, that ball, unless they handle the footballs differently than when we played. When we were playing, you couldn't really touch the balls. And they were pretty rock solid on a cold day like that. You needed everything to be perfect, the hold, the snap, everything. And I just remember watching that game that Sunday or Saturday, whichever it was, and just go, that was the worst hold I ever saw. Laces were straight back. The ball was leaning, I think, the opposite way. But again, it was from 27 yards. I mean, you should be able to do that in your sleep. I really felt bad for the kid. But I guess they're going back in the dome here pretty soon, I would hope.
Right. And Chris, curious to get your thoughts on the rule change regarding touchbacks being brought out to the 25-yard line next season. It seemed like the league was trying to get more touchbacks over the last few years, perhaps with the idea that they were going to reduce injuries and, improve player safety and that sort of thing. But now it feels like they're doing a 180 by, penalizing the team for making a touchback 5 more yards, bringing it out to the 25. If you were kicking in the league now, would you be trying to kick the ball just sort of, right at the goal line, maybe a touch over to try to entice the guy to run it out?
Absolutely. What you're going to probably seeing is a lot of directional kicking, kicking it down to probably between the 5-yard and the goal line, as close to the sideline as you can, so they have to return it. And I honestly, I think these rule changes that the owners or, whoever's in charge of making is to justify these meetings these guys have down in Florida or Hawaii. I mean, this is, in my opinion, the most ridiculous rule change, I've ever heard of. You're literally, again, this is a kicker speaking, so let's keep that in mind, folks. You're penalizing a kicker for being a good kicker. My thoughts the last couple of years, if a kicker is good enough to kick it out of the end zone, or if the guy doesn't choose to return it, penalize them or penalize the return guy. Put the ball at the 15-yard line. But then you got to go back to what the real reason is, theoretically, that they're doing this is to prevent more injuries, concussions, that type of stuff. So it's kind of a scale. You got to weigh one the other way. But you're talking to a kicker. You're penalizing kickers. So we're always picked on, you know what I mean?
Right. And Chris, speaking of special teams play, curious, how much time did you and your punters spend, with tackling techniques during practice? Did they ever teach you guys that stuff?
What's tackling?
Yeah, exactly.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean that's interesting. They got you out there as sort of the last safety valve, but they're not spending any time with teaching you guys technique.
No, God no. I mean, it's you're better. You're just not welcome to be seen during practice. I mean, you're just except during the special teams part of practice. Other than that, we're very scarce. We don't hang around. I mean, those guys busting their what's during practice for 2 hours, and they're gonna watch a couple of kickers walk out with probably flip flops and their shoulder pads off. So it's not a good thing.
And Chris, kind of going back to when you were drafted, and you were drafted in 1989, like we said at the top, and the Packers at that time, Chris, only 3 winning seasons, going all the way back from 89 to 1968, and one of those was the strike year in 1982. But I'm sure you're glad, just to be drafted. But based on long cold winters, right? You're at Texas El Paso. You're looking at Green Bay in the wintertime. Did you think to yourself, why did it have to be Green Bay?
Green Bay was so far off my radar. I worked out for, I think, the Denver Broncos, and I think it was the Los Angeles Raiders at the time, or wherever they were at the time. Green Bay was not even on my radar as far as being drafted. The talk for me was, I think, Cincinnati, Denver, or the Raiders, wherever they were at. And when I was, like any rookie, except unless you're, Peyton Manning or one of those guys they can choose where they go. But when you're drafted in the 6th round as the first kicker, you're just very excited to get into a league that's really from your whole life you dream about doing, but it's for most it's such an unobtainable achievement for most, and you just feel very fortunate and excited just to have the opportunity.
Bob, more for Chris?
Yeah, and Chris, I would always laugh when an opposing coach would try to quote unquote freeze Chris Jacke while you're playing in Green Bay because you're already frozen, right? It's just it was just
that ain't no joke, no.
Totally funny. Yeah, it's but you know, how was it, Chris? I mean, ending your career, totally opposite in Arizona. I mean, kicking on grass that wasn't frozen and wasn't painted and all. It was totally. It must have been amazing.
My golf game got quite a bit better. Let's put it that way. In December and January. I had a good time. I met. I had the honor of meeting Pat Tillman, playing with him for a year and a half. And that was, obviously something I look back as I take away from my experience down in Arizona. Had some good times with some friends down there. I made, Jake Plummer and all those guys. But at that time, my body, believe it or not, for a kicker was deteriorating, and I just, I knew I couldn't go any further. And I was one of those guys that, I knew when my time was up. I was having a bad back, bad ankles, and just it was time for Chris to end his career in Arizona. And you always wish you could play with the same team that drafted you, or or play for a team for the longest amount of years. And it didn't work out that way. But I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I'm a Packer fan, through and through.
And Chris, did you do what a lot of kickers did that we have on this show? I mean, spend a lot of time in the weight room, squats and leg presses, or did you do more of a total overall body type thing during your prime?
Gosh, being a kicker, you probably concentrate on those squats and those leg presses, which probably messed up my back in hindsight. I think players are a lot more knowledgeable. They have coaches for everything. You see a lot of guys doing yoga or, spin class or weights or, whatever they're doing, massage, everything is taken care of for these guys. And I wish that kind of presence, for us was made available to us back when I was playing. Who knows? I could still be playing like Adam Vinatieri. So, who I think is the best out there. So.
Yeah.
We are talking to former Packers All-Pro kicker and member of the Packers Hall of Fame, kicker Chris Jacke here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Chris, just a couple more before we let you go, and on a high note. As I was looking over some of the actual games that you played in back on December 3rd, 1989, you guys beat the Bucs in Tampa 17-16 on your 47-yard field goal. What I also find amazing about the story around that game is what you guys saw when you arrived back in Green Bay, 1 a.m. in the morning. Do you mind sharing that story?
Absolutely. It was a last-second field, like you said, 47-49. It was really a miracle. I mean, just to have the opportunity to kick the field goal. I think we had 2 or 3 penalties on that drive. Don Mikowski, the Magic Man, was our quarterback. But we ended up winning the game, right there at the end. And it's a 2.5, 3-hour flight back to Green Bay, and, we're getting ready to land, and the pilot comes on and said a small crowd has gathered at the airport. And if anyone's ever been to Green Bay, it's not a huge airport. It's half airport, half bait and tackle shop. It's about that big, but back then. But, we get off, we come through the terminal, and we come down, and they estimated there was 5,000 or 6,000 people sitting there in this tiny little airport. And the line that we had to go through, these people, was so tight, but it was just freaking awesome, just to have that many people out there. We were the Cardiac Pack that year. That was our nickname. We went 10-6. That was the year with the instant replay game with Don Mikowski. With was he over the line, not over the line? It was just a very memorable year, and that was one of those things that you look back on, meeting all those Packer fans at Austin Straubel Airport. That that finally told me as a rookie, there's something special going on in Wisconsin here. Yeah,
and following a Week 13 regular season game, that's why Packer fans are so great. And Chris, one more before we let you go, and like you say, you guys win Super Bowl 31, 27-24, or 27-21. I'm looking for, when you look at, what that feels like, right? That's something Bob and I and our listeners are not going to get the opportunity to understand what it's like to be a Super Bowl champion. When that clock winds down and hits 0-0 and the confetti drops and all that sort of thing, and now you're a Super Bowl champion. What's that like?
It's almost very difficult to. It's like this big whoosh of air just comes out of your body, and it's like, wow, we finally made it here. And if anyone followed the Packers back in the early 90s, we always seemed to have a problem beating the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. So it wasn't instant success, and we kind of gradually took those baby steps and made it to the Super Bowl and finally brought that Lombardi Trophy back to Green Bay. And I remember just walking around that field, and you're really in awe of the spectacle that's called the Super Bowl. And and today I can't even imagine, with everything that they do today with the media and all the hype, it's probably 1,000 times bigger than it was back then. But you just sit there and you just take it in, and it's just a magical moment. It really is. I don't even know how to describe it. I can sit here and envision, the countdown and all the confetti and the balloons, and of course you're in New Orleans, so you're going to have a good time as soon as you get the heck out of the stadium, and the parties afterwards. It's just memories you'll always be able to take with you.
That's great stuff. Chris, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can follow you both online and over social media as well.
Absolutely. I'm on Facebook, obviously LinkedIn, and go right to our website. And when I say our website, it's, I'm on there, and we got about 50 other Green Bay Packer alumni on there that do golf outings and speaking events. Or if you have an idea and want a Green Bay Packer alumni to come help you out with it, go right to the website, playeralumniresources.com. That's great. Chris, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come back and it's always a great pleasure to have you as part of the show. We can't thank you enough for being here. Love talking to you. All right, let's do it again real quick then, guys. Have a great week. All right, take care, Chris. All the best to you and your family. All right, thank you. Yep, you too. Bye-bye. That is Packers Hall of Fame kicker Chris Jacke, and he was also an All-Pro, and what a great guy, and they're doing some great things. Again, can't thank Chris enough for being a part of the show. Bob, always great to see, particularly, with our listeners here on the Armed Forces Radio Network, to see guys that are doing some great things for our veterans. Yeah, and did you get shivers, Chris, him just mentioning Pat Tillman's name? We've talked to a few guys who were teammates, and they all said pretty much the same thing, but people here, we haven't forgotten how good a kicker Jacke was. He was incredible for a long time, and we just love these kickers, Chris. They're so smart, and they do, and this is a positive comment. They do walk to that different tune, Chris. But Chris Jacke, what number did he wear? Number 13. That's exactly right. Wasn't bad luck for him. Before we get to our next guest, Toy Cook, I want to give a shout-out to our good friend Renee Shull at Integrated Play. Folks, you hear us bragging on Renee every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. But if you're either already in job transition or you've been thinking to yourself for a while now, boy, I really wish I were in job transition, well, go to integratedplay.org online and see how Renee can help you. We all want to do business, take advice from someone that we can trust and actually has our best interests at heart. And how rare is that, folks? Well, you're not going to find someone who fits that description any better than Renee Shull at Integrated Play. She is so smart, talented, the kind of person that you want to work with and have working for you. She's been doing some great things for our guests who have been in transition from being pro athletes and are now getting into the job market. I'm telling you, folks, she is just the very best. There isn't a better way to describe Renee than that. If you work with her for 2 minutes, you're going to understand why we say that every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. If you're an athlete or anyone in the job market, do yourself a favor and reach out to Renee. You're going to be so very glad that you did. Go to integratedplay.org online and give her a follow on Twitter at IntegratedPlay. All right, now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is one of our favorite TNT alums, and that's Toy Cook. This is Toy's 7th appearance with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and one of these times I'm actually going to get through to him and let him, he'll figure out that the Steelers steel curtain defense of the 70s was by far the best of all time. 49ers defense of the mid-90s, good, but a distant third at best. I want to remind you, though, about Toy's background. He is from Chicago, Illinois, was an 8th-round draft pick by the New Orleans Saints back in 1987, out of Stanford, also drafted by the Minnesota Twins to play baseball. He was an All-Pac-10 center fielder at Stanford. He was a member of their 1987 College Baseball World Championship team, had 3 hits and 2 stolen bases, folks, in the title game.
Played in the NFL from 1987 to 1997 for the Saints 49ers and was a member of the 49ers Super Bowl championship team back in 1994. Over the course of Toy's career, 362 tackles, 20 interceptions, 4 fumble recoveries, and he scored 2 touchdowns. In 2014, Stanford did the right thing, and they inducted him into their Hall of Fame. And we're very excited that he's back with us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Toy, Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show, my friend.
Hey, Thank you, Chris and Bob. How are you?
Oh, excellent. Fantastic. Thank you.
Great to be back. And yes, let me follow up real quickly. I'm sorry. But yes, Renee Scholl is fantastic, and she has my endorsement 1,000%. So anyone out there that is looking to get ahead, please reach out to Renee. So there you go.
Thank you for adding that, Toy. Fantastic. So, Toy, let's talk a little baseball to get things rolling, right? Baseball season, we're a couple of days old now, and we've talked about your time playing minor league ball with the Twins, but I don't think I've ever asked you, as a kid from Chicago, Cubs fan or White Sox fan?
Well, I am a White Sox fan, and I'm a White Sox fan because of Robin Ventura, who we beat in the College World Series, and I've known him since I was 16. It's a long, quick story. I played with Torey Lovell in high school, who's now the bench coach for the Boston Red Sox, and my left fielder, Ruben Amaro, who was the general manager of the Phillies, is the first base coach with the Red Sox. So now I'm pulling for the Red Sox because, back then we were in the Pac-10, so you got an all Pac-10 coaching staff, and then Robin, we'd lost the year before in my junior season in Stillwater to him, and then we beat them. Jack McDowell actually made T-shirts, beat Oklahoma State in the championship game the year before, and we ended up beating Robin, who's a great friend, and he's really good friends with Jack McDowell. I got to hang out with those guys when they were playing for the White Sox. So I am a White Sox fan, and finally they have Kenny Williams, who I defended, who was a Stanford football and baseball player, who's their president, general manager, over the player, and I can't think of his name right now, that retired because he couldn't bring his son to the ballpark. So despite getting paid $13 million, to only hit, 200. So, but I am a White Sox fan.
So any allegiance to the Twins who drafted you?
No, other than, I always say rest in peace, Kirby Puckett. I mean, that's one of the reasons I didn't go because, they were telling me, well, Toy, we can move Kirby to left field and you can be our center fielder. And, I think I've told you guys before, I think I would have made it to the bigs within the, requisite 3 to 4 years. But I was like, well, I don't think Kirby's going anywhere, and let me go see what the Saints are all about, and I will know in 5 weeks if I'm going to make it or not. And if for some reason I didn't make it, then I would always have that opportunity. So, and unlike Dion, I wasn't interested, and this brings up I had this conversation with a parent today. I think that, all these kids playing, specializing in one sport, that's why you're seeing all these injuries. I think the fact that, in high school we all played, football, basketball, baseball, and then even at Stanford, I played football and then in the spring baseball. And so I think that kind of different kind of movement, I never had really any injuries other than if I had to break something. And I think that is a huge impediment to me in terms of the athletes today nowadays, because they're just, you see it. I mean, Tiger Woods, they're playing golf. It's not like, he breaks down. When you're swinging, when you're doing the same thing over and over and over, I don't think it's good.
No, I think that's a great point. We've talked about that on the show many times. That so many kids today, to your point, Toy, specialize in one thing. They play baseball over and over again. They're on travel teams. They play it year round. And we see so many guys breaking down, whether it's kids having Tommy John surgery at earlier and earlier ages, or whatever it may be. But I think you're dead on. I think kids aren't all around athletes anymore. They specialize too soon. And they don't get the benefit of having played several different sports. And I think that's a great point.
I agree.
Bob, questions for Toy?
Well, first I was going to talk to Toy about just that, as far as being the all-around athlete, and so he basically answered my question. And to play the various sports, Toy, it probably made you as good as an NFL player as you could have been.
Yeah, no, I always said, and I talked to Mark Marcus, our longtime baseball coach, if I was a defensive back coach, and I talked to actually Brian Jordan about this. I saw him at the East-West Shrine game in St. Petersburg, and we were talking about it because he's one of my favorite players who not only did he play like 8 years, I think, with the Falcons, he went then and got like another 14. He might have got 6, but he got like another 14 in MLB. And I said, I mean, imagine him and Deion Sanders. I mean, the reason Deion, if he hadn't played baseball, would have been a fantastic corner, no question Hall of Famer. But the fact that he played baseball, and I said, no matter what happened, when I was tracking a ball, I mean, I shagged so many fly balls that, a lot of times you see DBs running around and the ball's up in the air and they can't find the ball. They're trying to find a receiver. And, as a baseball player, you track the ball and all you have to worry about is the fence. And so I really believe the fact that, the interception I got in the Super Bowl, I just put my head down and took off and tracked the ball and found the ball. And that was like catching a ball in right center field. And Deion, who was much faster than I, had that ability. Bo Jackson would have been a hell of a safety. He was a hell of a running back. But could you imagine Bo Jackson playing safety, knocking people out, and going to pick off every ball? And I really believe, and I said, if I was a defensive back coach, I would take all my DBs over and have them shag fly balls, really, for like the whole off season, so that they get used to tracking the ball. And I really believe that not only mentally does it help you with regards to, you're not getting beaten down. You're not, my wife is a realtor out here. We're out in Westlake, Thousand Oaks, where the Rams are coming. We went to go look at a house, and the Rams are coming out here, and we're talking to one of the realtors who were looking at this house, and I was saying, I used to leave because they were saying, players only come for 6 months now. And I go, well, now it's like 8 months, right, because they got these OTAs and the team wants you around. And back in the day in New Orleans, they wanted you to stay, and it was only $50 a day, which was $300 a week, and that's before taxes. And I was like, I'm not staying around for $300, right? Plus, when you're around coaches all the time, they never see change in you, right? So I kind of felt like if I left and came back, they could see like, oh, he got better at this. But if they're around you all the time, they don't really appreciate your value. But that being said, once again, I still took time off in the off season to get away from football. And I really believe that I understand there's a lot of money, but, Bob, you said it. Your body can only do so much. Fred Couples had to withdraw from the Masters. He's only like 54 years old because of back injuries. And you think about all the times those guys bend over to pick up a golf ball or swing a golf club. And this is not like, heavy weights, but a lot of these guys are breaking down. And so you think, because people are always like, oh, your daughter should play tennis, right? That's a brutal sport. And you look at those guys going back and forth, and that's all they do. And that's why I think if I was my kids, which they did play football, the boys did, but I told them, I go, you got to play another sport.
And Toy, I always wondered, these an 8th round pick like yourself, when you finally decided to concentrate on football, you probably, of course, you're running around training camps with 1st and 2nd round picks, and here you are, and you're trying to prove yourself. Did you constantly use that to your advantage, that maybe people didn't think you were as good as you were, or they probably are looking at me as a guy that maybe shouldn't be here, but you made them, obviously, you proved a lot of them wrong. But an 8th round pick, what's your mentality entering the league?
Well, Bob, I think I've told you this story before. Because I was coming from the Pac-10, and we had drafted Lonzel Mohill, 2nd round from University of Washington, and I'd gone against Flipper Anderson and Aaron Cox from Arizona State. Mark Patterson, who'd been in the league, and I was covering, guys like Kenny Marjoram, who would come back and work out, and Mike Wilson was a third receiver at the Niners at the time from Washington State. They would come, work out. So I kind of felt like, and the reason I was drafted in the 8th, ironically, is because Bo Jackson the year before turned down the number 1 pick to go play baseball. And then, in the NFL scouts, in all their infinite wisdom, they were like, there's no way a guy from Stanford is going to turn down baseball to play football, right? And I always said, like, it all came down to, if I was drafted by the Dodgers, and I tell Tommy Lasorda this, I was going to be a Dodger, right? But if it came down to the Saints in Minnesota, I was going to go football, right? I probably didn't give the best answer that they wanted, but in my mind, I had 8 picks my senior year. I played against the best. I always said I was lucky. I was blessed that in the fact that Jim Plunkett and John Elway and Brent Jones and all these players would always come back in the summer or the spring to work out, or really the summer, to work out. So I got to cover those guys. And then I had guys like Ronnie Lott and Eric Wright and Dana McLemore from the Niners coming to work out and then saying, Ronnie and Eric said, you can play in the league. There's no question. It's all about technique. And once I heard that, I always say the power of words. The power of words. Ronnie Lott telling me and Eric Wright telling me that, I could play in the league. I was like, I could play in the league then. So it didn't matter that I was drafted in the 8th round. It didn't matter, whatever they thought about. I just knew that Ronnie Lott and Eric Wright and, between John Elway and all those guys said I could play in the league. So it was funny, when you go to camp, everyone brings a little duffel bag with their little clothes, because just in case you go home. Well, when I got off the bus, and Chris Myers, who was a young reporter back then, says, so I brought my TV, like my VCR. I brought everything because it never dawned on me that I was not going to make it. And they were like, damn, Toy, are you planning on staying? I was like, yeah, what are you talking about? So I said I was kind of like Forrest Gump, right? I was like, stupid. Stupid is as stupid does. And it never dawned on me that I was not going to make it. And then our first training camp in Hammond, Louisiana, where it was like 1,000 degrees, and they told us about, like, you got to rehydrate, and it's going to be hot. And Jim Morris, second year, he's trying to weed out all the weak people. So we had it's not like today. I might have played like 20 years if they were under these rules, but we had to practice every single day in full pads. And they could bring as many DBs as they wanted to, and they brought, like 20 corners. And we had drafted 4 DBs, so I kept saying, could you imagine being a DB from the year before and they draft 4 in a draft of 12? And literally everyone was kind of falling by the wayside. And because we have a company called ProDirect Sports Management, we represent athletes, and I tell our kids, I'm telling you, it is about your ability, but it's also about staying healthy and not getting injured. And my main focus in my first training camp was to make every practice. That was the plan. I don't think these guys are going to make it. And sure enough, everyone fell by the wayside. And I was like of the starters, but I was still like one of the only guys to make every practice, and that's how I made the team.
Toy, let's talk about your former team, the 49ers, what we're seeing going on in San Francisco right now. They gave Jim Tomsula, one season. They went 5-11, and in the NFL anymore, there is no patience. So they let him go, and now Chip Kelly is the guy. How do you feel about Chip Kelly as the new 49ers head coach?
I think it's an excellent choice. I think they blew it. They should have got, in my opinion, Vic Fangio. Is the guy that I would have gone with. You'd have been guaranteed a very good defense. Most defensive coaches, we saw the effect that Wade Wilson had on with Denver, and I love Kubiak because Kubes is the guy that likes to run the ball. And then, you saw the Carolina Panthers with Ron Rivera, And so in the year before, they had John Fox, Pete Carroll in Seattle. So I just thought, being in the NFC West, I thought that I would have gone with Vic Fangio. Obviously, I'm biased. I've been with him for 9 of my 11 years. That being said, there's no question that they made a huge mistake with Tomsula. And to their credit, they didn't stick around, right? And I think there's no question that Chip Kelly is an upgrade. Colin Kaepernick is literally the quarterback that he had when he was in Oregon. So I think that they have a chance. I mean, and in defense of the ownership, they're really trying to do. The Yorks are trying to do the right thing. That no one will ever be able to replace Eddie DeBartolo, which him going into the Hall of Fame was long overdue. But it was great being up there for the Super Bowl and seeing Mr. D getting into the Super Bowl. But I think hiring Chip Kelly was very, very smart and shrewd, especially when you think about, when Chip was in Oregon, Pete, I think, was at SC. And the NFC West is no joke, and you need someone with that kind of offensive mind. And I just think that Colin is going to thrive. I mean, look at what he did with in Philadelphia with Sanchez, Stafford, that crew.
Mm-hmm. And Toy, you know how much of a Steelers fan that I am, so I really appreciate the tweet that you sent out following the Bengals-Steelers playoff game, calling the Bengals the dumbest team in the NFL. When you were watching that game and that whole situation unfold at the end, what was going through your mind?
I was watching it with my wife, and I was like, and I actually talked to Mike Tomlin about this at the Senior Bowl, because I said, I'm sitting there with my wife, and we talk. I go, prior to even all that debacle going down, the Steelers, I don't know, they kick off or whatever, or the Bengals kick off. Steelers get the ball, and in the middle of the field, one of their guys get taken down, and the Cincinnati Bengals, it was like a backup tight end, takes a swing at the Steeler on the ground, which they missed. And I go, oh my God, because I'm thinking that's 50. All they need is a field goal, right?
Right.
And I go, look, oh my God, my wife gets mad at me when we watch the games because I'm always like about 3 minutes behind because I'm like stopping stuff and rewinding on DirecTV, saying, look at this, right? And I got my fingerprints on the TV where I'm pointing stuff out, and so and Tomlin goes, that's right. That's what I was saying. Then the next thing, they're driving. They throw a quick screen outside. One of their tight ends from the Pittsburgh Steelers has the corner who ended up getting the penalty, Pac-Man, Jones,
right,
has him hemmed up on the sidelines. And then Pac-Man throws a fist on the sidelines, which they don't see. I go, oh, my God, that should have been 15 yards. So that should have been 30 yards of penalty. And Mike Tomlin's laughing. He goes, I can't believe you saw this while you were watching television. I go, this is what I do, right? I watch games as I watch. And I go, there's no way they're going to make it. And then, whenever you have Vontaze Burfict, that right there, it's the double whammy. Like, even after he picked the ball off and then ran into the end zone, I go, please, hopefully no one touched him, because there was like 2 minutes to go. It was like a minute. Like in my mind, and I've been up 28 points in the fourth quarter and lost the game. So until it says 0-0-0, he picks off the ball. He runs the opposite way into the end zone, a la Alan Page. And I'm telling my wife, I go, I just pray no one touched him, because it would have been a safety, right? Would have tied the game, and they would have got the ball back, and that would have been a kind of karma thing. But as it stood, it worked out, because lo and behold, later he hits the guy, Antonio Brown, which that really affected, because I really believe if Antonio Brown is healthy and obviously Roethlisberger is healthy, I think it's a different game whenever Antonio Brown is on the, and that is one of the part of winning the Super Bowl. You have to have luck, and Denver was beyond. They beat Tom Brady, they beat Ben Roethlisberger, and then they went and beat Cam Newton. But Pittsburgh is different, and I'm sure you will agree, Chris, without Antonio Brown. And so, but I did think that was just like, and they got the Vulcan mind meld with the linebacker Joey Porter. Because I said, I don't care, no matter, they can bitch about it, but part of the game, we always say, play the game, Schmegman, right? If Joey Porter comes onto the field, I don't care what he says, whatever he does. If you touch him or you touch a coach, right? They got into it on the sideline with the coach, and I love the defensive the coach for the. I mean, he's in a tough spot for the Bengals, but that's part of the game, right? That's part of the game, and the problem is at Pac-Man Jones and Vontaze Burfict made it about them and not their teammates. And I give credit to the kid from Texas. I think it was Colt McCoy, who's the quarterback that refused to throw blame. But if I'm in that locker room after the game, the fist might have been flying.
Bob, one more for Toy before we let him go.
Yeah, so I just on the Denver thing, and I know your career mirrored a lot like Elway. I mean, you chose the correct sports. I mean, have you guys ever had a chance to really sit down over the years and talk about your alma mater, how you picked the right sports, and how it worked out for both of you? And unlike guys like your Drew Hensons and maybe a Rick Leach's out there, I just wanted to get your relationship with Elway.
I actually saw him at the Senior Bowl, and his nickname is Woody, and we talked. We never really talked about like choosing. I mean, John he always knew he was going to be. First of all, and I appreciate you even put me in the same category as Johnny,
oh.
but John is once in a lifetime, in my opinion. He's doing stuff that like Cam Newton has John Elway type ability in terms of being able to run back in the day. But John, nothing against Cam, but John, 2 sports, Stanford. He's obviously very intelligent, as we saw, whether it be off the field with the car dealerships to obviously running. I mean, I think they've been to the Super Bowl now 8 times. And he was 2, and he's been 6. Yeah, he was 2-4, and now he's 1-1. He's just a special, and he used baseball, whereas I was actually interested in. I played baseball since I was 7, didn't play football until I was 15. But he used baseball as leverage to get to Denver, where I don't really think that he would have been a pretty good baseball player. And I don't know if he would have been a Hall of Fame player, but there was no question he was I would have been just as good as a baseball player as I was. I mean, I was even across the board, right? Whereas there's no question John was in the upper echelon as a quarterback, as to maybe the there was no one like him at the time, as big and as fast and as strong. I mean, he was just a complete stud. Football player and obviously a good baseball player, but his world was always going to be football. Whereas I think I was a little bit more. I was 50. Literally, if the Dodgers had drafted me, I was going to go play for the Dodgers or the Raiders. That was my other team. I always tell L. Davis. I mean, if I only had one poster my whole life, and it was Lester Hayes, and I just loved the Raiders. I mean, I was blessed to go to. My other team, Chris, was the Steelers.
There you go.
Yeah, I was a huge Steeler fan. Getting to talk to, when I was in Carolina Panther, Donnie Shell was our player engagement person. So it was great to talk to him. And when I have a picture of me intercepting the ball in the Super Bowl. In the background is Lynn Swann, and I was number 88 in high school because of Lynn Swann. So yeah, I'm a huge, Pittsburgh Steeler fan. 3 coaches, Chuck Noll. That's okay. You always think about where you want to be as a coach. Where would you want to go? I want to go. And if I was a coach, I go man, I want to go coach with Tomlin because they don't get rid of coaches in Pittsburgh.
That's right. And Toy, update us on what you're doing now. You mentioned the sports agency a moment ago.
Yeah, no, we have a company. My business partner on the East Coast is a guy named Peter Davis. We have Pro Direct Sports. We have like 12 kids that are coming up in the draft, or draft eligible, I should say. Ronnie Harris from Stanford Corner, Ryan Dillard from SC, Tyler Shamrock from Connecticut, just to name Will Hayes from Temple, and a lot of these kids, Joel Rees, who's from Georgia State. So we have about 12 kids. We'll be lucky to have 3 or 4 drafted, but like I tell the kids, they're all competitors. You just got to get to camp, and you got to stay healthy. So the name of our company is Pro Direct Sports Management, and then out here on the West Coast, we have a company, Empire Sports, which I think we're going to convert now to Sherwood Media. But that's TV and film, and we have a project with Mike Tolan at Mandalay Sports Media that we're going to take to Spike TV. So we're trying to get that done. Frank Shamrock is our host, who I think is fantastic. So, and then we got a couple film projects out here. So, just trying to keep busy. I'm going up to Stanford tomorrow. They have their spring game on Saturday. We're trying to build out. We have another company called Pro Players Network, which you can find on Facebook. So everyone listening, please go on Facebook, look up Pro Players Network and like it, because we're trying to build this kind of network, YouTube, but for pro players. So you'll check it out. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be glad to check that out. And Toy, how can our listeners follow you? Whether it's you've talked about here online, how can they follow you over social media as well?
I think I'm Toy Cook at Toy Cook on Twitter. I'm not, every once in a while I was a little upset after that Pittsburgh game because you just hate to see. I mean, I don't root for anyone, but just to lose a game like that, it was just I don't even know how I could sleep. So every once in a while I'll bust out on Twitter, and like I heard Chris Jacke, which his rookie season, that's how I actually ended up starting because Mikowski, the Magic Man, they ended up coming back and beating us the third game of the season, and the Saints installed me to start after that because Milton Mack from Alcorn State, that's not Alcorn, it's Alcorn, from the SWAC, got kind of beat up that game. I love Milt, but they ended up putting me in there to start, and it was that team, 1989. But like Chris, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. But really, go to Pro Players Network on Facebook and like us. That would be great.
We'll absolutely do that, and hopefully our listeners will do it as well. Toy, always such a pleasure and a privilege to have you as part of the show. You're, as I said in the intro, and mean it from the heart, you are certainly one of our favorite guests of all time. You have been very good to us, and we have enjoyed the opportunity to talk with you each and every time you've joined us on the show. Can't thank you enough for continuing to come back.
Hey, Bob, Chris, I heard you say 7 times. I mean, I'm getting up there with with oh my God, Alec Baldwin on Saturday Night Live. I'm trying. I want the record. I want to be, in your Hall of Fame. So you guys do a fantastic job. I've actually passed your information on to the CEO of Pro Players Network. I'm saying these are guys that we need to be, talking to. So hopefully we'll figure something out here.
Well, that would be fantastic. We'd love to do it. Thank you for doing that, Toy. It means a great deal to us.
Hey, always. You guys are great.
Thanks a lot,
thank
Toy.
you for saying. Toy,
Thanks,
all
guys.
the best to you and your family. We look forward to catching up with you again real soon, my friend.
Ditto, brothers.
All right, take care, Toy.
Take care.
That is former Saints, 49ers, and Carolina Panthers defensive back Toy Cook, Bob. It doesn't get better than that, my friend.
Incredibly intelligent human being, great player, Chris, and it shows you what an 8th-round draft pick, the mentality. They cannot measure mentality of a player coming out of the draft. Knowing what he told us, if scouts had known what was the kind of mindset he had, he'd be in the 2nd, 3rd round. I mean, that was incredible how he would not take no for an answer. But what a career, and a very, very good player, and my goodness, as smart as they get.
Absolutely right. All right, when Bob and I come back, it's time for us to turn on the Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the Positive. We'll do that and wrap up the show on the other side of these words from our friends over at Kyvan Foods.
Add great flavor to your next tailgate party with Kyvan Salsas. Former NFL tight end Reggie Kelly created these salsas for dipping chips and much more. In hot and mild flavors, Kyvan Salsas make a great marinade. They are terrific in meatloaf and are super toppers for everything from baked potatoes to scrambled eggs. It's a great ingredient to enjoy in a variety of family favorite meals. And some people say Kyvan Salsa is a meal to itself. With all the possibilities, Kyvan is truly salsa with soul. Kyvan salsas are also made from natural ingredients, and they are preservative-free. So look for Kyvan, that's K-Y-V-A-N, at area Walmart stores or online. Click on the Kyvan logo on our website to check retail and online locations. More information at Kyvan82.com.
Hi, this is former Rams QB Jim Everett, and you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, a.k.a. TNT, and it's explosive in here with my buddies, the hosts, Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari, and we're listening to all this on the Armed Forces Radio Network. So take it away, Ben.
And we're back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, what do you have for us this week?
Oh, Chris, I have to bring up the case of Devin McCourty. He's right here in the backyard in New England here, and he has done a ton of work. Since his aunt was first diagnosed with sickle cell disease, he and his brother, of course, Jason, an NFL player, they had this campaign. Basically, they call it the McCourty Twins Tackle Sickle Cell. It's a campaign to raise critical funds for the cure for that disease, but he's done things at his alma mater, Rutgers, in support of these patients. But that's just part of what he does, Chris. If you pick up any paper around here, he's always speaking at schools about the importance of healthy diets. He'll actually go in a gym and lead them through exercises. He gets to hospitals and schools whenever he can, and does a lot around the holidays, Chris. Especially we a couple months ago, I remember at Christmas, he continued to do what he's always done. He'll set up shopping sprees for homeless shelters and visiting children at Christmas time who are in hospitals. But he was a finalist for one of the Walter Payton Man of the Years and could have easily won the award. But being here in New England, I hear a lot about him and just had to bring him up tonight.
Very good. Bob, this week I'm going to turn the spotlight on the positive on Steelers Pro Bowl defensive end Cameron Heyward. Last May, Cam started the Heyward House for underprivileged children, and they work very closely as well with the Boys and Girls Clubs up there. He also works with the Southeastern Brain Tumor Foundation, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and Kids Voice, which is which helps children whose parents are in the criminal justice system. And I love how Cam puts it for why he's involved with these organizations. And he says, and I quote here, "These kids don't have a birthday. These kids don't have a day that they can call their own. They don't get presents at Christmas. I always think someone should have a special day for their birthday, and we're going to focus on them and have a birthday for them and let them just have fun." So he focuses on giving back to kids who need a helping hand. He also helps, those who battle asthma, something that Cam dealt with as he was growing up as a child. So he does so much work in the community. And he also does work as the Steelers player representative for the United Way of Allegheny County there in Pittsburgh. So, I mean, how much better does it get than that for, what Cam is doing for kids in and around, the communities that he's involved with there in Pittsburgh. So big kudos to Cameron Heyward for the huge difference that he is making in the lives of children in the Pittsburgh community, as well as this community back in Ohio as well. So two great things, two great guys doing a lot of great work in their respective communities there, folks. So please tune in here every week on Thursday Night Tailgate as we point out for you some of the wonderful things the players are doing around the league to make a difference, whether it's in the lives of children or in the lives of the people in their respective communities, because, we're going to continue to, put the spotlight on all the good things the players are doing, because we know that we all hear so much about the bad things, probably too much about the bad things that players do. And like we say every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate, it's the 1 or 2% of guys that are getting in trouble. It's the 98% of the guys that are doing great things. So we're going to be continuing to teach you about that stuff and bring those stories to light every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. All right, Bob, it is time for us to put a bow on this episode, my friend. We want to send our thanks out to Nick Athan, Tony Collins, Gary Barnidge, Chris Jacke, and Toy Cook for joining us tonight. And Bob, always a privilege, my friend, to get to share my Thursday nights with you and doing this show.
Same to you, Chris. The only way it could have been any better for you if you were still at Augusta doing a talk show from Augusta, right? So, but you're still close. But it was a pleasure, sir.
All right, next week, who do we have scheduled to join us? Well, former Giants and Eagles quarterback and now the head of the NFL Alumni Association, Joe Pisarcik, is going to be back with us. Look forward to the privilege of talking with Joe. Former Cowboys running back Sherman Williams is going to join us and talk about the organization that he and another former Alabama star, David Palmer, that they have started, and they're doing some great work to help kids make better decisions. So we look forward to hearing Sherman's story and talking about his career. Another former Cowboy and also Seahawks star, Ken Hamlin, the Hammer, going to be back with us. Always enjoy getting to talk with Ken. He's been a great friend of the show for a long time. And Mississippi State's D-line coach, Brian Baker, also going to be back with us. It's been a couple of years since we had Brian on the show, so it's going to be great to catch up with him as well. Plus, of course, Tony Collins is going to be back with us to share more of his stories in his weekly time slot. And our friends over at Major League Football, we'll continue to update you on how things are going there and the progress that they're making, whether it's for this developmental season or as they look forward to 2017 and some of the great players that we're going to get the opportunity to see over there. So hope you'll come back and join us and be a part of the show. Want to remind you, how can you follow us on social media? Well, Thursday Night Tailgate, we got a Facebook page as well, so please go check that out. Give us a like and share your thoughts and your comments with us there on Facebook. On Twitter, I am at CT-mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazzari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. Plus, also check out our site, thursday-night-tailgate.com. What can you do there? Well, you can stay up to date with who some of our future guests are going to be. Plus, you can stream or download any of our archive episodes for free, folks, by going there as well, thursday-night-tailgate.com. Bob, take us home, my friend.
Thanks, Chris. Sounds like a great lineup next week. I look forward to it. And, of course, our thanks go out to our announcer, Joe Lajanusa, for the great job he does with our weekly intro and ads, and to James Brocato and all the guys from Painted Faces for our upcoming outro music. On behalf of myself and Chris, we thank everyone tonight for listening. We appreciate you the most. Until next week, good night, Kevin. We miss you.